So I am Manav Joshi and I will be the host for today's session. I welcome to everyone, to our guest speakers, our sir, and all the students and members who have joined this meeting. I'll quickly take you through the flow of today's session. We'll be introducing the keynote speaker for today, Mr. Akshansh Chaudhary, formally introducing him, and later he will be taking the podium and talking with us about the topic which has been already shared with all of us, the day in a life of treasury manager, and we all must be familiar with him. We have already interacted with him previously also, and after the keynote speech, uh, Panda sir will be moderating the question and answer session. And after question and answers, the vote of thanks will be served by will be served by Ashish GV, our friend Ashish, and then we'll be concluding the session. So, by Panda sir's permission, do we move it, sir? Just to
Yeah,
confirm.
please move.
Yeah. So today is the fourth alumni session of this year, and I again welcome everyone, and also I welcome Pooja Bhatt, my friend Pooja, to formally introduce today's speaker. Over to you, Pooja.
Yeah, hi everyone. Good evening. Uh, Myself Pooja. Yeah, I'm Pooja Bhatt from PGDM SM Group 2020-22. So it's an honor to introduce Mr. Akansh Chaudhary as a guest speaker. So the main thing is the today's session is the day of Treasury Man. The Akansh Chaudhary is an assistant manager in the Core Vyas Bank Limited and the NISM Alumni Group of 2017-2019. So about the Akansh Chaudhary. So Mr. Akansh Chaudhary is an assistant manager, is a risk manager in Treasury Department. So he is graduated from Institute of Excellence in Higher Education from Bhopal. Also worked as a sales and marketing intern at SBI Mutual Fund and Mahindra and Mahindra Mutual Fund. So also served as a placement coordinator at NISM Group. So it's an honor to introduce that Akansh Chaudhary. So as we all know that we are already interact with Akansh Chaudhary uh, as a few months before. So without any further ado, I know call upon Mr. Akansh Chaudhary to speak further. So Mr. Akansh Chaudhary, most welcome. Now you
Okay.
can.
First of all, good evening to all. My name is Akshans Chaudhary and I am working as a risk manager in the Karur Vyasa Bank. So before starting something, like I just want to say that when I was in the college, there would be a there would be a that industry interaction programs, and Supriya ma'am and one Shivani ma'am is there, and they used to call me and say ki you have to attend the class, you have to attend those sessions. That time actually I and in my college I was always a late comer, me and my friend, my room partner. So that time I always come a late, but this time is like I'm on the different side, and you are where you are on the different side, and I'm on the different side. So it's my duty to it's my duty that you should listen up to last. So that, and I would like to thanks Panda sir, Inamdar sir, and all the NISM team who just invited me to interact with my juniors and all other people. So before starting a session, I just want to say that the today's session is basically I just made a PPT on the treasury department, which somewhere focused on those people who is going to join who is going to join the corporate, or we can say who is going to join the treasury department in the next 2 3 months. I make a PPT on that basis, so it would be helpful for those who is going to join in the treasury department, because what I saw, like in a previous year, like lots of the bank came, more than 60% bank came in the NISM. So this time I thought ki I should make a PPT accordingly, because when I joined the treasury department, for me treasury department is nothing that it does. It just mean that it's related to a stock market. That's it. I don't know anything about the treasury department. So like even I know lots of people having a doubt what exactly the treasury department do, because we know the stock market, we know everything, how the broking house work, how other department work, how the depository, how the SEBI work, but we don't know how the treasury department work. So my focus will be there. So I think now I should start. So Pandey sir, should I start?
Please start. Continue.
So the topic for that, the Panda sir gave me the day of a treasury manager. So it's like very good topic. So with like I made total somewhere 40 slides, but if you ask me to conclude in a one slide, you can see the background of that. What does the treasury manager do? The scene is like before in a trading hours and after the trading hours. So like a day of a treasury manager could be like this somewhere. Very tiring. So huh. Now what does the treasury department does in the bank, and why we need the treasury department? It's a very big question for all. So why I posted that the spine, or the what we can say the backbone on that screen, because in a simple word, if I put the treasury department, just nothing else but backbone of every bank, every single bank. The very crucial department is a treasury department. And what does the treasury means? Treasury means nothing which is relate, nothing, is just a funds, or a, what we can say, a money. So those who are the custodian of the bank are comes under the treasury department, those who manage the money of the bank. So it's simple, it's a backbone of the bank. I will just take further also in a deep, just for the explanation purpose, I just put this slide. So so before moving further, I will take like what is the structure of the treasury department, and this structure would be helping you during your interviews also. Ki what is the structure of the treasury department, and I will just go further also. So so this is the organ a fact office. And the reason for putting this emojis on the screen, just because to those the expression, those the emojis are showing the similarly like a what the treasury manager do. So front office, eh, those who are in the front office are like a those what we can say is like a warrior kind of thing. Though the person who fight for the bank, it's like a they are in the front office, and in a mid office, those are the people who are sitting, those who see everything with their suspicious, every single transaction in the bank or every single transaction which is going to happen in the treasury department, they see everything with a doubt, and it's their duty to see that thing. And the back office is like a very calm person, they sit, they do all the back office work, clerical work, and all the accounting entries and all those work, so they are very calm. And why I put this Chinese wall, there is a concept in a management, it's called a Chinese wall. It's like front office people can't meet with the mid office and a back office people. It's like they are in the dealings, they are managing money, they are managing the money of money of a bank. So it's not possible for them to sit together with a back office and a mid office. So there is like a small kind, we just for the analogy, the Chinese ball kind of thing. So no people can go to front office. It's like a completely secured with everything, with a like fingerprint scanner and all those things are there. So it's like a typical kind of treasury department. So this is the management structure. How does the treasury how does the staff look like? So there is a general manager, and after there will be a deputy general manager or a assistant general manager. And as I said that there is a front office, back office, and a mid office. So in a front office, there is a chief dealers, those who deals with the money, those who deal with the money, and what they're dealing, I will just explain you in the next part. And the second will be the dealers, chief dealers and dealers and in the back office, chief manager, senior manager, manager, and assistant manager. And the last two things, that manager and assistant manager, is very useful for you guys, because the thing that someday in a near future you're also going to join in these two positions, either in a manager or assistant manager, according to your qualifications. So it is very useful for you to understand what is the management structure of treasury department. So moving further, now I'm taking to the front office. So how does the front office typically look like? And one more thing, why I didn't put a mid office here is like a obvious question. Why didn't I put the mid office? Because the thing, a mid office is a part of a risk management department, not of the treasury department. We are like I work as a risk manager, so I am from the I work for the treasury department on the behalf of risk management department. That's why I didn't put that part in that. So for the general sake of learning, it's like mid office is a part of a risk management department. So this is the front office view. Typically it look like that only. So there is a forex desk which deal in a foreign exchange. There is a bullion desk which deals in a that gold, silver, and all those things, commodities. And there is a domestic desk. Those the people who manage the money market, SLR investment, non-SLR investment, equity desk. So I will be taking you one by one. What is a merchant desk? What is an interbank desk? And what is a money market desk, SLR investment, and all those things one by one. So we should move further. Just take a look. How does the structure look like that? So roles and function. So before starting anything, I would just like to ask something. Just don't, if you don't want to answer, don't answer. But the thing, just tell me why we need the treasury department. Like what's the main thing to set up the treasury department in every bank? You just don't answer. You just think over it. I will answer. So the main role and a function of every treasury department in every bank is a asset management mismatch. So what does it mean? I know you have heard many time, or maybe listening for the first time. Maybe listening for the first time, like managing an asset liability mismatch. So I just quoted one example there. You just see a lady who came to a bank for depositing some money. So at the downside, you just see the deposit is of 1 lakh rupees, and the maturity of the deposit is a 1 year. So it's like after 1 year the lady will come and it's asks to bank to give my money back after 1 year. So it is simple, quite simple. I didn't put any complexity in it, just for the understanding sake. And on the right side you can see that one borrower came and asked for the loan, and that loan is of 70,000 rupees, 70,000 now. But you can see the maturity is of 2 years. It means that the borrower will come after 2 months, after 2 years with the interest, and deposit that money to a bank. So now you can see, I just put everything simple. Now just try to understand what I am trying to say. That 10,000, that 1 lakh deposit is our liabilities for the bank, because bank has to pay interest on it. Simple. And on the parallelly, the 70,000 what the borrower has taken with the bank is an asset for the bank. But okay, everything is simple. But now here is a thing, that the maturity of the deposit is a 1 year, and maturity of a loan is a 2 years. Sorry for that mistake. So maturity of the loan is 2 years. So if suppose in a near future that lady come after 1 year and asks for the money, so bank doesn't have that much of money, because already they lend 70,000 rupees. Only the buffer they are having is only of a 30,000, but it's not possible for them to refund that money. So that is called the asset liability mismatch, because your assets are less and your liabilities are more. As simple as it is. So the main aim of the treasury department is to manage those asset liability mismatch. They have to manage, or I'm not saying to equal, at least they have to make that much of the fund in a reserve. So if something happen in a near future, so they would be coming. If some depositor would be coming in a near future, so they may able to, they are able to give that money to that particular person. So now the question arises that how they arrange that money. As simple as it is, they arrange the money by investing in other areas, and in other investment. Could be anything, but it should be in a particularly in a limits of the RBI. So they can invest anywhere. So I will explain you how they invest. So So these are the some functions that I will try to explain you one by one. So main function of every treasury department is a maintenance of CRR and SLR. CRR, cash reserve ratio, and SLR is steady liquidity ratio. So that's the first line we have heard somewhere in a 11th or in my 11th or 12th class, that okay, RBI told us to maintain some percentage of our NDTL to particular CRR, and according to a CRR and SLR. But actually that time we don't know what does exactly it means. So I will explain you in the next part. So now the second is ensuring ensuring the liquidity and the holding of the liquidity assets. So whenever the requirement whenever the requirement will come and the bank has sufficient money to pay to the depositors. So, and conducting all the investment in trading transaction within the regulatory framework led by RBI. And the one thing I just want to say, that RBI is a regulator for the banks, as you know. But there are some other bodies also who are regulating bank. Not direct way, not in the direct way, but in the indirect way. They are making the policies for the banks. So first are the FIMDA and FEDI. So FIMDA is like a fixed income money market and a derivative association of India, and foreign exchange dealer association of India. It's called FEDI and a FIMDA. These two bodies play a very vital role in a bank treasury department. Those whosoever is working in the bank, whosoever working in a treasury department, they should treat the whatever the circular they are releasing on the regular interval. They should aware of these things, whatever the RBI, whatever the FIMDA or FEDI is issuing. And the second thing came SEBI, because if the bank are listed, then that time also the bank also have to read the documents related to a SEBI, which are related to the stock market and all the internal policies. So making an optimum investment of the fund available with the bank while with calculating the risk associated. So this is the obvious, because if you are making the investment in some particular thing, but you are not assessing the risk of that particular investment avenue, then no use of investing in that particular sector. And diversifying the non-SLR part of the investment with a proper mix of various. Okay, this I will explain you in the next part. And increase our income by the trading in the investment, and capitalizing the arbitrage opportunity. The arbitrage opportunity may, as you know, that buying from somewhere and selling from somewhere, it's a zero risk profit. So it's like they have to see where they are getting that arbitrage opportunity, whether it would be in a forex side or in a domestic side. And better risk management and avoidance of the concentration risk. So what does the concentration risk mean? The concentration risk means, like RBI told us to put some money in this to put some money in the stock, to put some money in some particular investment avenue. So but it says you don't put too much money, so then it would be like whole concentration would be in a single investment. So if something happen in a near future and that particular investment goes wrong, and that the amount goes come down, then whole thing will be has to be suffered by a bank, and following the best market practices. That's so. So this is typically a front office. The how does it look like? Just a minute. Okay, this. Hmm. So first I am taking the domestic part. It's a domestic desk, or we can say the rupee desk also. So it's like so RBI कहता है, it's like a tagline for the RBI. So RBI कहता है is that CRR should be maintained at 3%, and statutory liquidity ratio should be maintained at 18%. So the question arises that why always every month every time RBI come to the news and say that the bank should maintain a CRR of 3%, and SLR should be maintained at 18%. So what's the reason for maintaining it? Every time whenever so who are the RBI to tell to us? So RBI is simply like a father who always tell to their son to keep some money for the near future. It's like it's like father come to us and he say that beta kuch paise bacha ke rakho, future ke liye kaam aayega. So similarly, like RBI is like a father and we are the son, and banks are the son for those, for the RBI. So he's just giving the advice to keep that much percent as a cash reserve ratio and a statutory liquidity ratio as a 18%. So but the thing now it says that CRR is okay. The name it suggests a cash reserve. It's like a which is in a hard cash, or we can say simply cash. And what does the statutory liquidity means? Means it doesn't tell anything where to invest, why to invest. So cash reserve ratio is simply 3%. Now how to calculate it? Actually, I forget to make a PPT on it, how to calculate due to a time lag. So now I will try to explain you. So as it shows that the cash reserve ratio, so every bank, every single bank, every commercial single bank has a current account with the RBI. Every bank, either it's a Yes Bank, Karur Vyasa Bank, SBI, every bank has their current account with the SBI. So RBI says, if suppose our NDTL as you know, as you all know, net demand and the time liabilities. So whatever the saving deposit, current deposit, fixed deposit, and whatever the deposit with the other banks, well, other bank deposit with us, sorry, other banks deposit with us, whatever the deposit, those cumulatively we say that net demand and time liabilities. So suppose the bank having an NDTL of 1,000 crore. Just take simple. So the 3% would be somewhere 30 rupees. Okay, 1,000 into 300 into 3 divided by 100, somewhere 30 rupees something. For the sum, for the just for the understanding purpose, 3 rupees, 30 rupees. So RBI is saying कि every fortnight basis you should have at least 30 rupees in the current account with the RBI. So every bank has to put 30 rupees on an average basis, fortnightly average basis. It should be 30 rupees. And parallelly, it's saying also on a fortnight for the bank, fortnight is not for the 15 days, it's for the 14 days. It's like a for 14 days. So every single day, like first day, second day, third day, fourth day, fifth day, up to the 14 day. 14 day, the bank says, the RBI says that okay, the thousand ka 3% will be 30 rupees, and the 30 rupees ka 80% would be at least every day in the current account of SBI. So it would be somewhere 24 rupees. You just calculate, because sorry for putting the PPT, so not for putting the PPT. So it would be 24 rupees. So every time, every day, every fortnight basis, whatever the NDTL, we just calculate that 3% on that thing, and it would be somewhere like, for example, 30 rupees, and 30 rupees ka 80% would be somewhere 24 rupees. So every day bank at least have to put 24 rupees in the account with the RBI. So like 24 in a first day, 20, for example, 24 in the first day, second day it would be 26, third day it would be 28, or in the fourth day it could be a 25. But but when we do the average of all those 14 days, it should be more than the 30. It should be equal or more than the 30 rupees. That was the RBI. That what the RBI is saying. So I hope you may understand it. So now the second part is a statutory liquidity ratio. Statutory liquidity ratio, nothing but just the investment. Does RBI is saying just keep with yourself, but in the liquid assets. 18%, like suppose NDTL, it's 18% would be somewhere 180 rupees. 1,000 into 18 divided by 100, it would be somewhere 180 rupees. So SLR would be 180 rupees, and that 180 rupees, now it's your duty to deploy. Wherever you want to deploy, you can deploy. But the RBI make a bar that you can deploy only on this. You can see this cursor. Can someone?
Okay, thank you.
So as you can as what I'm saying, that why we need the statutory liquidity ratio, that so the RBI says us, see, you have to put that 180 rupee, the 1,000 into 18% would be a 180 rupee that you have to put in a SLR. And what does the SLR means? The SLR means those securities which are highly liquid and can be converted in a cash in an urgency basis. So just for the example sake, I just want to take one example. I don't want to I don't want to take the name of the bank. If suppose in a past somewhere some bank got the news came out that the bank is going to be a bankrupt, and suddenly some other bank came and just bailed out that bank. At that time I was in the bank, and that time the same thing happened. Those who are the depositor and those who are the depositor in other bank also, they are saying that private banks are going to be a bust. So they were moving towards the bank branches and saying, give my money back. So in that case, the bank can't say no to them, because it's their money. So in that crisis, or in the panic time, the bank has to make sufficient money, or a sufficient money to available with them, so they can convert it, so that they can pay to the depositor, whosoever is coming to the bank. That time they have to make that provision, so that they can get that money. So here we can see that what I put in a SLR securities. So in SLR security comes central government security, state government security, and SDL means a state development loan. So in a market it's not deals with the state government security, it deals with the name of state development loans. And the other is a T-bills. So T-bills, as you know, it's a money market instrument with not more than 365 days maturity. So in India right now, the T-bills is coming with the 91 days, 182 days, and 364 days. And the T-bills basically issued on not on the interest basis, it is issued on the, what we can say, on a discount basis. So for example, if suppose some government is issuing at a 95 rupees and payable at 100 rupees at a face value, so they are issuing at the discount basis. And other approved securities like CMBs. So what does the CMB means? So it's like you guys, I hope I know that you didn't listen this particular name. What does the CMB mean? So it's like a cash management bills. So it's a form of T-bills only, but the maturity is just below 91 days only, not more than 91 days. So it's similarly like a T-bills only, but with a maturity of 91 days. So it's a cash management bills. So these SLR securities are considered as the most liquid securities in the bond in the treasury department, or we can say in the bank. So it can be converted at any time. And on the other hand, and the RBI also said it's not necessary to keep 18% only. Like you are having an NDTL of 18%, so RBI is not saying you to put 18%. If suppose you can put any limit, any much amount you can put in it, not 18%. You can put 22%, you can put 23%, just because if suppose something happens, so you no need to reduce your 18%. You can just, whatever the buffer you are having, or like 22% minus 18, like 4% you are having that surplus SLR, you can sell them in the market and just need the whatever if you need in the emergency, you can get that particular amount. Now the second thing is a non-SLR securities. So non-SLR securities, what does it came under? It came SLR, it's a debentures, state government securities, bonds, equity shares, mutual fund, equity and debt, and CDCPs and security receipts. Security receipts are basically nothing, it's issued by the ARCs, asset reconstruction companies. So these are considered as a non-SLRs because they are the less liquid in comparison to those which come in the SLR securities. So now can you just go upside? Okay, thank you. Oh, no, upside. Oh, no. In a previous slide, I'm saying. Okay, thank you very much. This much. So as you understand, there are the two categories: the SLR securities and non-SLR securities. So now, how bank trade in these securities? How bank purchase, sales in these securities? So these securities are categorized into three major heads. Whatever the security, whatever the portfolio they are having, the portfolio will be divided into a three part. It's a HTM, HFT, and AFS. So what does the HMT means? HMT means held to maturity. Those securities which are held till the maturity comes. It could be a 5 years, it could be a 10 years, it could be a 20 years. So they will hold up to the maturity. And in that also there would be a two classification, SLR and non-SLR. As I showed in the next slide, you can go and see that what I showed there. So it's a SLR, non-SLR. And the second one is a held for the trading. So held for the trading means those securities, if the market are good, then we can select. So those securities which are in this category can be sold. These securities should be sold before 90 days. The tenure of those securities should be 90 days, whether it's an SLR or non-SLR. And what is the available for the sale is this category. This category is just simple, nothing else, which don't come in the STM and which don't come in the HFT. The remaining comes in the AFS category, which is more than 90 days. It could be. So those securities which doesn't come in HFT and STM, those securities will be categorized in the AFS. So it would be non-SLR and non-SLR. So and the main thing, you can, as I told, the held to maturity, you have to hold till the maturity. So you can sold those security between somewhere in the middle of the maturity. But the thing, you have to take the permission from the RBI. You have to take the permission from the RBI, and you can't sold more than 5% of that, or 5% of that security. So, and you have to take the permission. So I think now we should move forward. Can you, hello? Next one, this one. So this is the money market instrument. So I explained you the secure, that SLR, non-SLR, and now there is the money market desk also. So I explained you SLR desk, I explained you non-SLR desk, and now it's time for the money market desk. So what does the repo, reverse repo, traps, T-bills, and call money, CROMs? So you are seeing too much repos are there. So repos, that which come with the prefix of the RBI. It's actually, it should be a suffix of RBI repo. So if we need a fund on an overnight basis, or we need some on a short term, if suppose something happen and we need some fund, if suppose we have to maintain that CRR and we don't have that much of cash, so we can go to the RBI. We can go to the RBI and ask for the money under the repo. But the case is there, you have to put some collateral as a, and what should be your collateral? Your collateral should be that SLR securities which we maintain. It should be that central government securities or a state government security. So that could be your that should be your what we can say, collateral. So T-bills, call money, notice money. If you want a money for the if you want a money for the overnight basis, then it's a call money. And if notice money is 1 day to 14 days maturity, is it's called a notice money. And term money, which is 1 day to 365 days, 14 days to 365 days, sorry, 14 days to 365 days are considered as a term money. Certificate deposit, the bank issue commercial paper, it's nothing else is there. So, and the CROMs and traps are generally nothing, just CROMs and traps, like you can see CROMs repos there, traps repos there. These are nothing but these are the platform provided by the CCI, the Clearing Corporation of India. So these are the platform from where also you can borrow for the short-term duration, money for the short-term duration. So nothing else is there. No. Forward. So this is the question that everybody wants to answer that how are the GSECs are issued. So as you see that GSECs are issued through the auction conducted by the RBI. So as you can see, the first box is there, like there are the members. You can see the members, commercial banks are there, primary dealers, schedule, urban cooperative banks are there, insurance company, provident fund. So these are the members with the RBI EcoWare platform. So this is the platform for when the securities are issued for the first time. Like suppose if the government wants a securities, so they will just go to the RBI in a EcoWare platform, and there you can just bid. It's like you can see the arrow, and you just see that I just pasted there place a bid. So these members will place a bid with the on the EcoBear platform, and on auction basis they will be getting those securities like government or the state government securities, and the settlement for those securities will be at a T+1 basis. Like today you punch the order and you get the security. Tomorrow the money will go to RBI, and that securities will be go to your SGL account held with the SGL account is that you actually I don't know the actually forgetting the names, that subsidiary general ledger. Subsidiary general ledger, it's a PDO of it, as you see in the movie of Scam 1992. So there they said the PDO office. So all those securities will be submitted there with the, so everyone having SGL with the RBI. So as soon as, if suppose tomorrow is that auction, for example, tomorrow is that auction. So you, in the morning you just put the orders, and the result will be, the result of the options will be coming at 1:30 p.m. And for the T-bills it will be coming at 1:30 p.m. and for the government or the security it would be coming at 2 p.m. So now how would we get to know that auction is coming? So what the RBI will do? RBI will do every half yearly, they will, on the every half yearly basis, they will issue one circular. In that they will just show that what are the security. So the thing is that what I said you the government will issue in a consultation with the RBI, government will issue one circular. In that it will be there that, and at what time they are going to issue those new securities. So they will be launching on the half yearly basis. So can you just move to next slide? So this is the specific mine in a non-dematerialized form, what we can say in the paper form. So I just take it from the RBI, I just take it from the circular. So you can see that it's a typical paper format of the security. So just move to next slide. So this is what I said now, RBI will issue on a half yearly basis. So here you can see that from April 1st 2019 they would be getting a funding of 17,000 crore. So what will be the maturity, what will be the 1 year to 4 years, 3,000 crore they will be taking. Similarly, later you can just go through it, what does it say. So just move forward. So nothing. So okay, leave it that. Okay, how does the trading in a GSEC take place? So once you get those securities, now actually those GSECs are tradable in the market. So how we can trade those securities? Or like suppose if I want those securities, how would I buy that security? So there are total 4 platforms where you can buy those securities or sell those securities. Those platforms are negotiated dealing system. Like in a banking term, we said NDS OM. It's called NDS OM. So the bank will go in this platform. They will just see the rate, what rate the market is getting, and they will just punch the order in a parallelly, and parallelly if somebody wants, they will come here and they will just see it. So, and over the counter on a telephone also we can trade these securities. Bank can trade these securities. So like suppose if I call to some bank and ask whether you are having this maturity securities, to just give me on a telephone. But the thing, as I said, that it's a over the counter trade. But this trade has to be submitted in the NDS on one platform. Is that you have to record that data. I have taken this much from the over the counter. And the NDS OM web, it's actually for the retail customers. So those like in the NDS OM platform, only those who are the primary members with that primary members with the RBI, those who can trade in this. Like commercial banks are there, and like insurance and other organizations. But apart from non-primary members, they can go to NDS OM and just trade there. And other is the stock exchange, as you know. So this is the what we can say specific man of that NDS OM. So this is how it look like. So it's a Reserve Bank NDS home USU, and you can also go and watch it. Like if you want, you can just see what rate is going on. Just type NDS home and you will directly go to that particular site. So just move forward. So I think I'm not going too much detail because there are lots of things, so I will just take the forex desk also. So what now, there is a domestic desk, there is a money market desk. I already explained. Now it comes for the forex desk. What does the forex desk do? So there are there are two types of transaction. One is a merchant transaction. Okay, so there is a forex desk in which there are the two types of the transactions are there. One is a merchant transaction and other are the interbank transactions. So what does the merchant transaction means? The merchant transaction does simple as the transaction between a bank and the bank's clients, those who are the exporter, importer, or like what we can say, those who want a loan in a USD INR for the some purpose. If somebody is going, if a particular person is going for the education, so he might go to a bank and ask for that. May I ask for that particular amount? So bank will be giving that particular amount to bank. So those types of transactions are called merchant transactions. So it's like exporter is, if some exporter want to want some contract, if some exporter want that my contract will go after 2 months to somewhere in a, like we can say, United States. So at that time that inward remittance would be there, like sum of $1 million. So that time he will just ask to a bank that, sir, my $1 million is coming after 2 months. So that for that time I want to book a contract. So we can say it's a forward contract. So 2 month contract. So he will ask to a bank, if whenever that 1 million would be coming to me, that after 2 months you will be liable to buy that 1 million from me, because I am booking the contract right now. So it's like a hedging kind of thing. So an FCNR, FCTL is like a transaction. Somebody income is coming from foreign and he wants that fixed deposit in that foreign currency. So that is called FCNR, foreign currency non-reputable deposit. It's called a fixed deposit. And travel card is simple, like if you want to go to for some traveling purpose to foreign, so then bank may issue the travel card also. So these transactions are called the merchant transaction. Now what's the interbank transaction? So interbank transaction, like among the banks, and these actually what we can say, the 70% of the transaction in this market, interbank market, is done for the bank itself, for their profit making purpose, and for the like remaining 30% we can say for the covering the merchant deals. So merchant deals, like suppose I already said, if suppose the exporter is coming after 2 months by giving me a $1 million, that time if suppose if some adverse condition is there and I want to pay, I want extra, if some case wrong, so that time if suppose 1 million, the dollar rate is 74 that time, so I have to pay 74 to I have to pay 74 to my exporters. Okay, I will pay to 74 to my exporter and I will take my dollar. And then now I am having my dollars. Now the thing what happened, now in my account there is $1 million after 2 months. If suppose the rate that time is a 72, for just example, I bought at 74, but my dollar that time is a 72, that 2 rupees difference, I am making a loss, because I buy at a high price and I'm selling in the market for the less price. So for that time I will hedge that risk in before 2 months only. Now only once I book that contract, now I will parallelly go to an interbank market and I will book one sales contract. If I'm booking a buy contract in a merchant deal, in the same time I will go to an interbank market and I will book my sale contract there to cover my risk. So that's it in an interbank market. So what are the products? It's like a products come on the maturity basis. So banks will offer the customer and the trade in the following products. So I think this is the main important thing from the what we can say from the interview point of view, because lots of interviewer ask what's the cash transaction and all those type of transactions. So try to understand. See, I explained you the forward contract there, but if suppose somebody is coming with the I want it tomorrow only, I want today that dollars. So what I will do, there would be a cash or a ready transaction that the settlement would be in a T plus 0 means today. So these transactions are called the cash transaction. Tom transactions means T plus 1 means tomorrow will be the settlement. And what would be the spot transaction? Do not go with the what does the spot means? Spot means today. It doesn't mean today. In a foreign exchange term, spot means T plus 2 days. Like what we say in that in our equity market, the settlement is in a T plus 2 days. So in India, in spot transaction here would be in a forex market will be T plus 2. And whatever the transaction which is more than a 2 days, it would consider as a forex transaction. Simple. So just move. So these are the market timings. Just take a look for a second, because this timing is going to change from Monday, because due to a COVID this timing has been changed. So before the COVID, for FX foreign exchange timing was a 9 to 5:30 5 o'clock. So now it has been changes to 10 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. for the market report, 10 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. Now these are also changed from these will be followed. These timing will be followed from coming Monday. So this for the just reference purpose. So just move forward. So Treasury Department back office. Now this is the back office. Like I explained you what we do in the front office. Now this is the back office thing. So like whatever the deals we are putting in the front office, they will be coming in the back office for the settlement part. So it's like I'm not taking too much time. It's like a payment and settlement reconciliation. So like reconciliation of nostro accounts and like accounting whatever we are punching the orders and all those things. So it's like statutory returns and nostro management. So it's like very deep to explain right now. So I'm not going, because some other important parts are there. So I will take that part. So just move forward. So okay, this actually I was searching for some code for related to a risk management, but I didn't get. But this is also a cool thing which I find. If you think the compliance is expensive, then try a non-compliance. So I just removed that compliance and put risk management and like try non-risk management. So it's like it's applied to every organization, whether it's a bank, non-bank, or it's any company we can say. So even it's in a compliance part also is truly true, that quote given by someone. So it's like if you think risk management is expensive, then try non-risk management. So it's like, so just move forward. So just take a look, and actually you are not able to talk. Just can someone please search the risk manager? Why I put, can someone please tell where is the risk manager? Anyone can take the volunteer.
The referee.
Huh? Exactly. That's why I put that pick in that. Exactly. That referee is a risk manager. So why I put, just to explain you what the risk manager do. Now this is my part, what I handle in the bank. So those people who are just playing a volleyball, they are like they are the people from the Treasury Department. Okay. So they know the rules. They know everything. They know every limit, so where they have to put. They know they have to put 18% in SLR. They know in 3% they have to put in CRR. They know everything. So what's the use of risk management? So what my use? Everything they know. So they can put easily. But what my use? What our use? The use is that they know rules. We also know rules. Everybody know rules. But somebody should be to object them if something is happening wrong, because the thing is that they know the rules, plus they have authority to trade also. They know the rules, plus they have the authority to trade also in the market, but we don't have authority to trade in the market. I think you get what I'm trying to say. So they may put a wrong, they may put a some transaction which is out of the limit also. So they can't object themselves, na, because they can't. Nobody will object themselves. But it's our duty. If suppose risk manager saw that, then it's a duty of a risk manager to object that people that, sir, you are doing wrong. It's a duty of the risk manager. And why we set up the risk management now it's a current trend in every organization to set up a risk management department. So the thing is that everything is there. They know the rules. If suppose something went wrong, also RBI may put some penalty also. Everything will be settled down. But what's the main risk that behind every organization? Can someone take just a volunteer? What's the main risk that behind every organization that they're set up in that risk management department? Okay, if suppose they are breaching the limit, if they are going out of limit, okay, they can pay the fine. But if something happen very severe, then what is the extreme condition? What is the extreme risk that every organization is having? Can just take a look. Just go up only. Just go up only. Here I am. So the main thing is a reputational risk. Every organization is having a reputational risk. If suppose, okay, you will pay a fine, there might be your stock goes down, your bank stock goes down, everything can happen. But suppose once the reputation has gone on this, some misbehavior or some breach of the limit, and RBI in that as a result of that reputation goes down, result can happen that your license may get cancelled. The main threat is a reputational risk. Doesn't matter how much fine we can pay the fine, but once the image has gone, everything will go. That's why they are setting the risk management department. Just go forward. So there are the two types of risk that we handle. Like one is a quantitative risk and one is a qualitative risk. So just go up. So okay, this is the main part of risk management. So why I put this circle, just to gain your attention, that it's like you see that one is a RBI limit and one is a bank own limit, and middle that we are sitting, the treasury department is sitting. So it's like RBI has their limit, but the bank has their own limit, which is under the RBI limits. So it's like we are somewhere double secured. So it's like, if suppose we breach that limit, if suppose bank breach that limit, so still we are having that much of buffer, or we can say that much of difference, so that if something happen, we can handle that time. But suppose if it's breached the RBI limit also, then it's very severe for the bank. Then they have to pay the penalties also. So it's like every bank has their limit and RBI own limits. So RBI will issue the limit. According to that, the bank will decide their own limit, but under the RBI limits. So I hope I hope what I'm trying to say, that you understand that. So just move forward. So as I explained you that in the previous part, there are like two types of classification. One is SLR and one is non-SLR. So in a SLR, I said the central government securities, state government security, T-bills and other like CMBs are there. So these are the highly liquid securities. The bank is saying that the RBI is saying there is a no limit. You can put any such amount you can put according to your will, because these are the highly liquid securities. So in that SLR category you can put, but now the question arises that, okay, we are having suppose we are having the deposits of like 10,000 crore, so it's like we can put 10,000 crore itself. No, the reason, one limit is there. You can't put 30% more. You can't put more than 30% of your total assets. So this is the limit where the SLR lies. So SLR should not be more than 30% of your the total assets. So this is so that I'm telling the limits which are set up by the RBI, and there are some other limits also which our bank set that I can't tell you. So it's like, so like here you can see in the debenture, you can't put not more than 20% of your total investment. So as you see that total investment somewhere of like 1 lakh crore, so you can't put more than 25,000 in that, 25,000 crore in that. So now here you can see the equity in equity you can see that not more than the 10% of your net worth as was the previous closing accounting year. So whatever your net worth at that time, you can't put more than 10% in equity shares. And similarly, as you can see in the CTCPs or securities, these are the, actually I didn't put too much limit because it's like it's differ from bank to bank. So it's like everything has a limit. Everything has a limit. So just move up. So there I explain you that is the portfolio type. This is the portfolio type of what we can say limits. So now here there would be some sector wise also limit. Like for example, there would be a 3 sectors: the public sector, private sector, and others. So here also a limit, like you can't put X% of X%, like in as I said, in SLR you can't put anything, but when it comes to a non SLR there would be some limits. So like not exceeding like more than like what I can say, what I said, like you can't put 70% of your non SLR portfolio in the public sector units, those who are issuing bonds or anything. In a private sector, for example, you can't put more than like 50% of your non SLR portfolio, and others also similarly like that. And so this thing we monitor on a daily basis. So like we make the report. What the mid office do, mid office see the portfolio of the bank on the not on the same day, because the trading close at somewhere at 5 o'clock. We come on the next day, and on the lag of one day we will go in the office. We will see the previous day portfolio, and we will just compare like what is the amount in the SDR, what is the amount in the SLR, what is the amount in the non SLR, or what is the amount in the CDCPs, what is the amount in my equity portfolio, and what is the amount in my mutual fund, like whatever they invest in the mutual fund. Also we are having limits, like you can't put more than 10% of your net worth, or you can put only in those mutual fund whose AUM is more than 5,000 crore. Like I'm just giving the example. So it's like too many limits are there. So we just made the format, and we just have to put the data in that. You just once put the data automatically in the like what once you put the data in the single sheet, on the second sheet you will just get all the things. If suppose they are breaching the limit, it will say yes automatically. It's an Excel function. But if suppose it doesn't breach, it will say no. It's an Excel function, nothing else is there. So we just have to feed in the data in that Excel sheet, and automatically the result will come. Now the holding period of HFT, as I told, the HFT category should be sold before 90 days. Should not held more than 90 days. So on a daily basis, we have to check the portfolio. Okay, this thing is on the HFT category. If this should be what we can say sold before the 90 days. So we have to check that. Limits. Now the second part is limit on the portfolio basis of the maturity. So like I told you, as you heard also, longer the maturity, higher the risk is there in the bond market or wherever you say. Longer the maturity, higher the risk are there. So like there would be in a bank there is a 3 type of maturity: short-term security, short-term maturity, medium-term maturity, and long-term maturity. So like short-term would be 5 years, medium-term would be 5 years to 10 years, and long-term would be more than 10 years. So there is a limit, like you can't put more than this much amount in that short-term or long-term. Like you only can put 70%. You can put like either you can put 100% in your short-term security, or you can put like 70% in a medium term securities, or you can put 30% in a medium long-term security. So it's like that. So there are also limits. So modified duration and VAR is also there, as you know, like you are studying also. So VAR, there is a there is everything as there is a particular amount set up by a bank. So we have to check if that modified duration or the VAR is breaching or not. So these VAR and all those things are automatically generated. It's like all system generated. We no need to do anything. We simply have to check the limit. Now can you just move forward? So now it's like I told you that there is a qualitative, quantitative. So I just explained previously quantitative of domestic. Now it's time to a quantitative risk, quantitative limits of forex. So like I told you there is a chief dealer and a dealer in similarly in a domestic there is a domestic desk, there is a dealers, and similarly in a in our forex there is a chief dealers. So there would be deal size, like in a one day you can put this much, you can buy this much of USD, or in one day you can sell this much of USD. So every dealer, every chief dealer, every dealer and every chief dealer has their limits. Suppose if the chief dealer has a limit of $5 million, so the chief dealer can't put the order more than $5 million. So, and similarly like a dealers also. So all the limits are described in the form of dollars only. Dollars, like we can't say ki your limit is 10,000 like in a euro, or we can say your limit is 20,000 sterling pound or like that. All the limits are decided in the terms of USD only. And later on you can just convert it into what we can say the respective currencies. So the overnight position that we have to check, what does the overnight and day night position means. So like suppose if I'm in the forex department, if I'm in the forex market, and my limit, if my thing my is like if I'm buying the 10,000 USD from the market, and the parallelly if I'm buying 12,000 to 12,000, if suppose if I'm buying 10,000 USD from the market, and the same time I'm selling 12,000 rupees in the 12,000 rupees USD in the market. So what would be the situation? Like 10,000 I bought and 12,000 I sold. So that's now it's a case like if we take the difference, that 20,000 is that 20,000 is my open position. Sorry, 12, not 20,000, 2,000 rupees. That 10,000, 12,000 minus 10,000 would be my 2,000 would be my open position. That is overbought position, and that position is not covered. Because if something happens in a market, it will go down or up, whatever the situation. So we are having every dealer having the particular limits. You can't put that much open position in a daylight position will be more in comparison to overnight position, because if suppose, because over in a daylight position means you are having a chance to exit the position, because markets are open. At the trading hours, in the trading hours you are having a too much limit, because you are having the market on you are having the screen in front of you. But if suppose you went to home and you kept some position open, so as you know the forex market is open for 24/7. If suppose India market is not open, other markets are open, and if your position is if your position is in the, like what we can say, in a cross currency, for example like USD to euro, or euro to GBP or some kind of that thing, and you are sleeping in your house, and suddenly something happens like Brexit or anything can happen, so it can impact to your portfolio. So what the treasury department has their limits, so they can't put open position too much in a daylight and in at night and overnight also. So like as you can see the individual gap limit and aggregate gap limit, as here you can see, just try to notice what I am trying to say. See, the screen has gone, just hello. So it's like you just see I put the USD on the vertical side, and the cash tom spot one month 2 month I put on the horizontal side. So you can just see if suppose there will be a limit on the cash transaction also, tom I told you T+1, spot T+2, and those from 1 month. Thank you, sir. So now you just see what I put the USD here, and the cash tom spot, these I already explained, then 1 month 2 month 3 month 4 month 5 month and 6 month onwards. So these transactions are called the what we can say forward transactions, because cash tom spot, and after that whatever the thing is a forward thing. So there is a limit for everything. If suppose we can say just take USD in a 1 month column, just go in a, like if suppose 1 2 3 4 fourth column and 1 month. So if suppose some contract is of a 1 month, so there would be a limit also, currency wise limit and plus that that what we can say bucket wise limit. We say bucket for it, like 1 month bucket, 1 month bucket, 2 month bucket, 3 month bucket. So there will be a limit for USD in 1 month bucket. There would be a limit for 3 month bucket in a USD, some particular limit. So individually we have to check all those things. All those things are system generated. Just we have to check whether in any bucket the limits are breached or not. So just all things, and if suppose we aggregate all those limits of use, if we just added all those things, euro, GBP, and all those other currencies, whatever the summation is coming, like all the maturities of 1 month, 2 month, 3 months, we just added, and all the currencies we added. So whatever the answer will come, it will become aggregate gap limits. So it is like that. Now can you please just move forward? So now the second thing is country risk. Like, see, I already told that exporter importer are coming to a bank to book the forward contracts. So obviously there would be some that goods are coming from some particular countries, or if suppose someone is going to foreign for some study of that particular currency is involved, and we are punching that order, we are punching that deal in the system of particular country. Like there would be a America, there would be any country would be there. There could be a China, there could be a Japan, and other small countries would be there. So there would be a country risk also. Suppose, for example, if suppose USD, if suppose election is going on in US, for example. So if suppose some adverse result came, and what if something happened to a forex market, it will show the impact on the forex market itself also. So there would be a country risk, because whatever the political condition and whatever the thing going on there, so that thing is also reflecting in our portfolio also, because we have taken that much of we have taken that much of risk also, no, of that particular, because we booked the contracts of that particular currency. So this is the country, this is the EGCC, one organization is there in India. So they calculate the risk on some factor. It could be a political factor. It could be there are lots of factors are there, like economic factors, and they calculate, and on that basis they calculate the ratings for every country. This I have taken from that site only. This is not updated one. I have taken I have taken old one. So you can just see that Afghanistan is having the rating of C1. Or we can say for the Algeria, the rating is of B1, and in the last you can see the Indonesia is having the ratings of A2. So every bank has a particular barrier. Every bank has a particular barrier that you can't invest, or you can't take the transaction in those countries whose rating is less than A1, A2, or B1, B2. Like those who are having D1, we don't have to go in that country. Whatever the profit they are making, whatever the profit we are making, but with that deal doesn't matter. But if suppose the risk is there in that country and the rating is D1, we will not go there. As simple as it is. It depends on the bank to bank. If suppose some are aggressive, some are very what we can say conservative. It depends on the conservative, like if the bank is conservative or if the bank is aggressive. It's like that. So can you just move forward? So like now you just take a second and just see. So the country was having a A1 rating. It's called an insignificant risk. A2 low risk, and B1 moderately low risk, B2 moderate risk, and like that, and the D1 very high risk. So as I told you. So it's for your reference purpose, for somebody ask you in a near future. So just go through it. So can you just move forward? So obviously there would be a counterparty risk also. Like in an interbank we are dealing, in a CDs we are dealing, and in repos we are dealing. So lots of things lots of instrument we are dealing with the banks also. Other banks like it would be SBI, it would be Axis, and all those things. So in every category of the instrument, we are having a single, every instrument having, we are having the limits. Like suppose if the CDs, we are having a 500 crore, so we can't put 500 crore of CDs of that particular bank, or we can't put more than like 100 crore of equity in that bank, or like it's like everything having a limit. In an interbank also, we can't take that much transact, we can't buy that much USD from that. So there we are having every limit. So how we calculate this limit? So on a closing of every day, we will get next day we will get the data of previous day. We will just, as I told you, we are having the Excel sheet. We will just feed in the data in that, and automatically in any category, it would be a call money, it would be a CD, CPs, or it would be a equity or interbank. In any category, if it is breaching now, it will show yes or no. It's like Excel function, if function we are using, and automatically it will come yes or no. Just we simply have to put the data and we have to check. So just, can you just move forward? So okay, this is the main part. As I told you that there is a, like, we calculate the risk on the basis of quantitative and qualitative. Up to now I told whatever which are related to numbers and limits, all those things, but obviously there would be some non-qualitative risk also, or limits also. So the first thing, see, as we checked the data, that there is a no breach and nothing. So we will not keep with ourselves. Okay, we just saw, okay sir, nothing is there, move forward. It's not like that. On a daily basis, we have to what we can say, there is some various platforms of RBI is there. We have to feed in the data daily, on the daily basis. So like suppose whatever the forward transaction for the previous day, we have to feed in the data on a daily basis. We have to report to the RBI. So it's a mandatory upload. So daily I'm going to office, daily I'm opening my PC and I'm feeding the data, and I'm submitting to the RBI. So once the data is submitted, in email, it will show that okay, your data has been submitted. So at that time, why they are asking when the audit will come, when the RBI audit will come to our bank, that time they may use that data. Okay, you feed in that data at that time. Also, what is the data for the cross check purpose? So daily we have to put the data on RBI and various other sites also. Now the second one is very interesting for the risk manager. So now the second one is like very interesting for me, for the risk manager. Like phones to out from the dealing room, phones to be keep out from the dealing room. So those who are entering in the dealing room, as I told, the chat was contact. So those dealers who are going in the dealing room, it's our duty of the risk manager to check whether they are taking their personal phone inside the room. Because according to the RBI rule, no dealer has to take their phone inside the dealing room. Because it may happen if a dealer put a deals on the phone base, on the phone, they may call to a broker or some other counterparty, and they said, okay sir, punch this deal. So this is not allowed. Or they can take the snap, also of the screen and send to someone other. So it's like an insider trading kind of thing. It's our duty to check whether they are taking phone inside or not. So we are checking daily. Okay, they are not taking, they are, and all the deals which are punching in that screen. So that also punching through obviously they have to talk now. They have to contact to some other like broker or other counterparty. So there would be some phone provided by the bank itself. So they will be calling on that particular phones only. So phones are generally provided for the tutors only, that Thomson tutors only. So there is some advanced function is there in that telephones. So that I don't know. So now the third part is that checking of the absent and the present of the dealers. So this is also the main qualitative data thing. It's like, if suppose if some X dealer is absent that day, and some Y dealer come on the morning and punch a deal on the name on the like what we can say on the login of the person who is absent, on the dealer which is absent. So it is also illegal, because that person is absent, and how you can put the deal on his behalf. So that we have to check, okay, the deals which are put in the screen and which are successful, that we have to check, and we have to check who is the dealer on that day. So because whenever the RBI is coming randomly, they can ask whether you are checking or not, show me the data. And they may ask for the date whether this person is absent or present on that day. So now the fourth one is also dealing room doors should be closed during the trading hours. So obviously, because nobody should go inside, and they can come outside, but like from the outside, and nobody should go inside. So we have to make sure that dealing room doors should be closed, and ensure the tenure of the dealers in the dealing rooms. So like suppose if there is a rule that like mandated by the RBI that no dealer should be do trade should be in a dealing room more than 6.5 years. So like suppose if the dealer tenure has ended somewhere, like he completed 6.5 years in the dealing room, then it's a duty for the treasury department to remove the dealer either in some other department. He can come to back office, but he can't continue with the dealing room. In a very next day, he has to remove whenever he joined, and whenever the 6.5 years ended, that time he has to remove from the dealing room. So it's like that. So these are the, what we can say, these are the limit, these are the qualitative things. Now this is a very big question, because what if the limits are breached? Okay, up to now I talked about, okay, nothing is breached, nothing is done, we are checking daily, but by chance if it chance came and some limits are exceeded, then what we are going to do? That is our main part. So the thing is that, and for like I just want to say that one thing, on a usual basis you will not find any exceeding. Like for example, it's like for the next 2 months you are not getting any exceeding in a SLR, non-SLR, anything you are not getting, and now you are get bored. Oh, nothing is coming, nothing is exceeding. So now in that case you may lose yourself. Okay, nothing is there. Okay, nothing will come. So you are not checking also. Like previous day nothing is there, so today also nothing will be there. So it doesn't mean that you have to be careless if limits are not breaching. It's your duty to check everything is in a line, because okay, up to 2 months, up to 3 months, even I'm saying up to 4 months, nothing is coming. But suppose after 4 months you are coming in the morning, and suppose you check one thing and you just missed there. If suppose their limit breached, and if you missed something, then and you move forward to the next day, then it's like it will be removed. Now that limit will not be rectified. And whenever the RBI come and if suppose luckily or unluckily, if suppose he asks for some data, and the same data if he asks for the same day, when did you show your carelessness, that time the RBI may fine you also. So what I said, what if limits are breached? So there is not too much to panic, because I already told that there are two limits are there with the banks. One is the RBI limit, and one is the domestic, one is the bank itself limit. So we, whatever we are feeding in in our system is our limits only. So those limits are breaching. Those limits which are breaching is our bank's own limit. So no need to get panic, because panic situation will come when it is breaching to the RBI limits. So it's like the how to rectify it. Now the limits has breached. Now what's the rectification purpose? So can you just move forward? So now as I told you that if the breach, so just go down. So as just here only, delegation of the power. So I'm not saying that breaching is a bad thing. If you breach, then that cop will come, that police will come and catch you. It's not like that too much. It's not to get worried or not to get panic. There is, everything has a delegation of power. So up to particular limit, up to particular thing, there is everyone has a power to authorize that particular deal. Okay, if I bought something which is in the limit of 50 crores, and I bought for the 60 crores, the 10 crores access can be authorized with the chief dealers or dealer according to their delegation of powers. And now as soon as we go up, like from dealer having suppose the dealers having some limit of 10 crore only, he can authorize exceeding of 10 crores only. like suppose as we move forward, the chief dealer can authorize or rectify that exceeding up to 20 crore, and move DGM AGM can rectify it up to 50 crore. And as soon as you are moving up the level of what we can say power is increasing, so general manager could be having a, like what we can say, 100 crore. He can, whatever the exceeding, if suppose 100 crore exceeding, he can authorize, he can rectify that. So then after investment committee would be there, and then after the CEO MD will become CEO MD having the limit, having their power. So like 1,000 crore MD having some power to authorize. And if suppose if it is going out of hand, so then they have to go to RBI and ask for particular approval. So this is the how, if suppose breach is there, so this is how they handle it. So suppose they are asking, if suppose they ask for some permission, okay, they have, so it's a responsibility of risk management department to go and ask to those treasury people, sir, whether you have taken those permission or not. If they have taken the permission, then they have to put the letter to risk management department, and we have to keep that letter for the reference purpose. Whenever the RBI is coming, that time we have to show to them, okay sir, they have taken the permission for that thing. So this is our duty, to check everything. And I think that's it. Now can you just move?
Just conclude, no? Akshans.
Just more 15 minutes, sir. Just. Oh, want to know more about treasury department? So it's like, if you want to know, I just pasted some slides. I pasted some that links also. So for the risk management, or the just if some person who is going to sit for the interview in the next 2-3 months, so just go through this links. You will get a primer, and you just read it. That's it. Just move forward. So want to be a part of the treasury department. So this I kept for just for the additional purpose. Those who are the batch, this year the batch which is going to be passed. So if you just read, if you just mug up, or what we can see, if you just read this terminology, now it's more than enough for you for the interview in a treasury department. I just sum up all those things. You just go and search on the net. You will get everything, and half of the thing you might be getting in my slide itself also. So it's like that's for the reference purpose. Just move now, sir. Can I say something? Hello.
Yeah.
So can you just please down? So this is my concluding part. Just move down. So the guys who are listening me for the first time, so this is my page which is running on Instagram. So daily I'm posting something related to a stock market. Guys, please go up now. So this is my Instagram. This is I'm handling daily. So daily I'm posting something related to the market and whatever the new. So it's like, it's a request to all you guys, just go and follow if you like my session. If you think it's a worth to follow, I'm not forcing anyone to follow. Just go and check it once. So just go to next slide, please. It's a finance wale. So this is the what I do. I post daily a daily wrap up. What is the market down? What is the market up? Top, and this is like top 10 biggest stock exchange. This kind in a meme format also I posted an explanation in a very simple way. So I hope you just go and follow. I just share the link, and that's it. And one more thing, just Panda sir, just next 5 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, so next 5 minutes, because those who are going for the placement this year, that lots of queries they are asking. Like previously, like 2-3 months back, they asked me that the thing how we should prepare for the placement, and we are not doing FRM, CFA, and all those things. So I'm saying, if you have not done any CFAs, FRM doesn't matter. You will get a placement. And the thing now, how I'm saying, those who are doing CFA, FRM is okay. They are having any advantage. But the thing, those who are not doing it, doesn't matter that you will not get the placement. So the only thing, but you have to be equal to them. Then how you can be equal to them? So like whenever you are going to NISM, or you are just going to just make lots of projects and assignment, whatever the Panda sir is giving or other faculties are giving, just do that project. And just if you confirm, if you sure about your project that I have done my project with my 100% dedication, just put on your CV. If it is a 5 project, 10 project, doesn't matter, just put all the project, because whenever the interviewer will see in that CV, and you know that what I have done in that project with is my 100%, I have done with my 100% effectiveness, you can explain them, and you will get some, and even an interviewer will get some food that that they can ask you from some, then they can ask you something from that, and you as you know, you are the 100% in that, so you can explain anything. So I'm again saying, don't worry about the placement, don't think anything, and that's it. And I hope I will meet you soon somewhere physically in the like personally in the when I will come to NISM, or Panda sir will call me. So it's like that. So thank you and happy Diwali to all. Sir?
Yeah, thank you so much. May I now call Panda sir to moderate the question and answer session? There must be two questions in the chat box.
I'm seeing one question on the chat box. Can I just answer it?
Yeah, sure. Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Someone is asking ki, if suppose why there is a 6.5 years limit for leadership, you mentioned only the period of one, only after this period one can obtain the experience, use this experience if he works. So the guy who asked me ki, after 6.5 years you will be getting that much of experience, so why you are not continuing that guy with the dealing room? So the answer is that if you are joining, so for me, for example, if suppose I'm going to treasury department, and like you are also going in the treasury department, so suppose you are going in the treasury department as a fresher, kind of, if you are a fresher or like hardly 1 year experience in some other field, so in that case what they will do, they will put you first 3 years, either they will put you first 3 years in the back office itself. Nobody is going to put you directly in the dealing room, because in a dealing room is where the area you are handling the public money, you are handling the bank's money. So nobody is going to put you directly in the front office. After gaining a particular knowledge, and it's a discretionary of what we can say GM or AGM to whom they have to shift it to the dealing room. So it's like completely depend on the higher management. And as you say that after 6.5 months he will be getting experience, it's not like that. First he has to gain the at least 3 to 4 year experience in the back office, then they will be shifting to that. So already he is having a 4-year experience, that's why they are like transferring to the front office. So nobody is going on the day one in a dealing room. So first you have to gain that much of knowledge, then. So, and why they are removing? Because it's a RBI mandate to remove, because may something happen. It's like what we can, physical attributes and all those things after 6 years may come down, because you are in the front of a screen and you're handling the public money. So it's similarly like an army man removed after 45-year age. It's like some like what we can say physicalness come down, or like eyesightness and all those things. So that's why they have to remove. So I hope I may answered you this question.
Yes. Thank you so much. And there is another question that what is difference between cash management and treasury management?
So see, cash management, see, nothing is there, nothing is different, because the thing, as I said, the treasury itself is managing the cash. The other departments are just handling the sales part. They are just taking the money from depositor and they are just sending to the other thing. And how you are saying the managing the what is the difference between? So nothing is different, but how they are managing. Like suppose I just want to quote one simple example. There's a bulk deposit above 2 crore. The whatever the deposit, term deposit, what we can say FD, or in a simple language, which is above the 2 crore, are considered as a bulk deposit. So how the treasury department play a role in that particular thing is like, if suppose the bulk deposit 2000 is that bulk deposit is above 2 crore, that time they have to, while opening that fixed deposit, they have to take the permission from treasury department. Why? because obviously if somebody is putting a money in your bank after some maturity or you want that you want that 2 crore rupees. Okay, so that 2 crore rupees that you want, it obviously it would be having some interest also. So that time, at the time of maturity, the bank has that much of liquidity or that much of cash in a hand to give that to give that depositor. So that how they manage, that how they see whether we are having enough money at that time to just whenever the redemption come, that time we are. So like as I said you, that if suppose some other bank goes on bankruptcy and suddenly the news came out on the news came out. So like the other bank depositor will move towards the bank, their respective banks, and they will say, okay sir, give my money back, give my money back. And I told you there is a asset liability mismatch is there. So like you are having the deposit of 1 year and other is your loans of having of 2 years. Okay, so that time you can't go to your borrower and say give me my money back because my depositors are asking. It's not like that. So that time treasury department has to see that whether they are having that much of money to pay the depositor or not, and you can't say no. You have to either borrow from the market or you have to sell those SLR securities, but anyhow you have to pay them. That is the management what we are doing.
Okay. So thanks, Akshans. You have done a very good job. Good motivation was there towards your juniors. They will now prepare for the job market. And for others information, Akshans is every day uploading all the daily newspapers, business newspapers in the Finance Club. Even the Financial Times he is also uploading. That is a very good thing. Like continuity is there. He's in touch with NISM and with you people. I have couple of questions, Akshans. You may take it as your advice to your junior. It may not be a direct question. One doubt I have. You are saying medium term is up to 5 to 10 years, or it is 5 to 12 years.
No sir.
It differs from banks to bank.
Yes sir.
Because normally medium term is 5 to 12 years.
Sir, what our bank is following, I'm just saying what are the limits.
Your bank.
So I'm not telling anything out of things. Whatever written in our policies and whatever the RBI is following now, so that's what we are seeing. Because sir, if we are not checking those limits now, that RBI auditor will, and that time now, the risk management department is just on the what we can say on the fire. They will continuously asking you why you do this, why you didn't check that, and all those things. So that time you have to very cautious. So
and you are having some limitation to invest overseas, or unlimited you can invest.
Okay, so that we are having. So suppose we are putting if some foreign investor or somebody wants if somebody wants that loan from us. Because that part I didn't include it because I actually due to a time that so there is some just a second, there is some limits also. So like for example, we can't put 50% more than we can't loan more than 50% of unpaired tier 1 capital.
Okay.
So whatever the 50% of that capital now, we can't lend to overseas. Or we can't borrow from them also. So it's like limits. So we follow that limit. So lots of things are there. So it's very difficult to sum up in 1 point or 2 hours or 1.3 hours.
Yeah, that is true. And many of your juniors are in touch with you. That's how they are mentioning. Okay, you are the first batch of the NISM PGDM as well as first batch of the campus. So when we have moved to campus in 2017, you were the first batch. So how do you feel about the campus facility? Many of your juniors have not seen the campus. Specifically to free your mind, the recreation facility, or to strengthen ourselves to use the library. or to roam here and there in the local market like Mopoda. Just says few words how they can optimal, like they can use optimally, optimum use they can do, and uh, maybe in a few months they will come back to campus. They should be prepared from now onwards how they can use it. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So definitely, definitely, this is a very good question. Apart from those academic things, so it's like as you asked, like we are the 30, we are the 31, we are our batches of 31. So we enter at that college, and that college of 70 acres, and we are like feeling isolated that time. Because to be frank, I'm not saying to be, many things are like, what we can say, many things are not matching with what we expected, because 31 we are, and that time we don't have anyone to ask, to whom we have to whom we have.
I'll just add one thing. When Akhyans came, we also moved to campus first time. That time, the campus was not a light problem, network, all problem.
So,
It happens when we start one
so
institution
that
on
time,
new campus. It happens. Yeah, please continue.
that time I moved, and we 31 are feeling like isolated, and it's like I don't know though, that super 30 batch of your, like the previous batch only, that we are also that super 31, but you are super 30, we are super 31. We came and we saw, oh, nothing, like food and all those things, and like lots of things are that which are not up to dated. So that time actually when I came, so nothing is like, nothing is there. So that time, but the time, as the time passes, so slowly, like we are now it's our my habit to be in our college. And it's like I'm a diehard friend of table tennis. And in my whole 2 year life, in whole 2 year life, whenever I was in a campus, every day I went to a table tennis room daily. Because for me, that 10 lakh, that 10, whatever the amount, like suppose 10 lakh rupees, that what I paid, it's not for that college fees. It's not my college fees. To be frank, that is not my college fees. That is the investment which is I am making on myself. Because see, it's not a fees. You are thinking as a fees. Okay, I am paying 12 lakh rupees. So if you are paying that 12 lakh rupees now, so you should think that how could I could take my 12 lakh rupees. And for me, I'm saying now I have taken more than 15 lakh rupees from that college. I played too much, and even I have done everything. I went to swimming pool, I went to squash, I went to swim, and I went to like squash and gym also. Even I went. So even I go to walk also. And what I just suggest you guys, whenever you are going to college now, try to do one thing which you like the most. Either it could be a table tennis, either it could be a gym, apart from academic. I'm not saying कि जाओ लाइब्रेरी में एंड पूरा सुबह से लेके शाम तक लाइब्रेरी में पढ़ते रहो. I'm not saying that is not thing. Apart from academic now, you just choose one thing. Because one of my friend is Navneet. He's my colleague in the bank. He's not doing anything. He simply walk morning and evening. So it's a good habit for him. He, in a whole college life, he just walk daily in a college. Like college is somewhere of like what we can say half kilometer. So he daily go up morning, evening. He just go on a walk. So at least you just take one thing. Either it's a table tennis, swimming pool, gym, whatever you like. But do for my suggestion, you just do one thing. At least do one thing, because you are paying too much to the you're paying to the bank, you're paying to the college. And second thing, the most useful thing in a college now, sir, voice is coming now.
Yeah, yeah.
The second thing which the most important thing in the college is a library and a Bloomberg. The most important thing. If you don't use that thing in a whole college, like now, there is no use of being in a college, and it's not a use of being in a college for the next 2 years. Because that Bloomberg, when you come out now, that Bloomberg is costing 25 lakh rupees, and you are lucky that you are getting that terminal. And that terminal, by a single click, you will get whole world information on a single click on your screen. So try to use a library. And I don't know whether you heard Pranjal Kamra or not. The good thing which I heard from the Pranjal Kamra told me that that the thing that I went to college, I choose those books which are most expensive. I start reading and slowly I come down up to my first completion of my 1 year. I read all those books which I can't afford. So my personal suggestion is that just go and read books and use and read the newspaper. See, for the time like I am daily posting newspaper. So the guy like actually I am only that guy who's posting. So I'm pasting daily new. I'm just posting newspaper on a daily basis. But when you go to college, now, don't be too much like what we can say habit of that reading newspaper on a phone. Just go and try to use that paper newspapers, because I think it's like more worthy to read that thing, because once you touch that paper and all those things now, so it will be more good to read. So use terminal and try to, and the second thing, try to, and the third thing, try to participate in every activity which is going to happen in the next 2 years. Either it would be a cultural, either it would be a sports activity. Even I even one of few of my friends, they don't know how to dance, but they took the participation. And for me also, even Panda sir knows how active I am in the college. I make that, as you saw, that alumni logo. So I was actively for that. I was active in that logo website. I prepared. Even I launched that website. You can just go and check on YouTube also that how we done all those things. So try to take those small steps. And because if you think मैं book में पढ़े रहूँगा, book पढ़ता रहूँगा दिन भर सुबह शाम, no, nothing is going to happen. I'm saying now, until and unless आप बहुत ज्यादा पढ़ाई करते, कुछ जरूरत नहीं है. आप मतलब दिन के कॉलेज का जो क्लासेस है, सपोज वॉट एवर द फैकल्टी इज टीचिंग यू इन अ क्लास, that is more than enough, and just take 2 hours hardly in your room. Apart from that, try to do some other activities, try to participate. And the most important thing for the interview purpose, those who are going for the interview, is like I already told, make the project, okay. But the thing from the day one, I'm saying, even I told to like my juniors also previously, I said, try to invest in the market. Try to invest in the market, because the thing why I'm saying now, because whenever you go on an interview now, that interviewer straightly asks that you are studying in that college where it's a hub of securities market, and you suddenly say, sir, I'm not investing. Like in the last 2 year, I didn't invest in anything. Even I don't have my demat accounts also. So the thing is that, so that is like a, what we can say, a contrary, or what we can say, an irony. Like you are going to an interview and are saying that, sir, I'm not investing. So I'm not saying to invest 10,000, 20,000. For my example, when I went to Karur Vyasa Bank, they asked me first thing, what you learned from the NISM. I simply said, sir, how to react in the market. First question they asked me, what you learned in the NISM in a previous 2 years. I simply answered, sir, how to react in the market. So they seem that the same. Now the next question they just put me ki, do you invest in the market? Yes sir, I invest in the market. Where you invest? I said, I invest in the Punjab National Bank. I invested in Indraprastha Gas Limited. So nobody is going to ask you how much you bought, how much quantity you bought. They are asking you for what you bought. And whatever you are buying now, I'm not saying it's compulsory, but what I think, just take a piece of a paper and write a 5 points, whatever you're buying. If suppose you're buying Reliance, just write the 5 point key, sir. Why, if suppose interviewer asking why did you buy, so at least you should remember why I'm buying this share, this particular share, why I'm buying. At least you should write 5 points. Okay, balance sheet is this much. Okay, profit loss is this much. Okay, that's apart from quantitative, just to try to focus on a qualitative data also. So they asked me whether you focused on only on the PE ratio or PV ratio or a balance sheet or share price, or you also focused on a non-quantitative data, that is qualitative data. I said, sir, yes sir. I focused on that qualitative data also. Like Indraprastha Gas Limited, I told sir, in a near future the gas demand is increasing, and the Indraprastha Gas Limited is a Delhi-based company. So Delhi-based company is like, in a near future, Delhi is the most polluted city in Asia. So not in the next 2 to 3 years or next to 5 to 10 years that the petrol vehicle will be substituted by the CNG gases. It's not possible to substitute by the electric vehicle that for India right now. So
Okay, thank you, Akhans. Your juniors will be keeping in touch with you.
okay,
Over to you, Manav. It's almost 2 hours. Students are keeping their presence, so we can conclude the session. Yeah,
sir,
Manav.
definitely.
Audible, sir?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was definitely delight to host. It was definitely delight to host you again, Akshans, and hear from you. And we will definitely be working on all your suggestions and tips you gave for us. So, to invite GV Ashish, my friend, to give a vote of thanks. Ashish, over to you. Ashish.
Yeah, thank you, Manav. Yeah. It's my privilege to have been asked to propose a vote of thanks on this prestigious occasion. I, on behalf of NISM, extend a very heartfelt vote of thanks to the kids who blessed us with their presence and took out the valuable time of your daily busy schedule. I must mention our deep sense of appreciation and special thanks to the speaker of the day, Mr. Akshans Chaudhary, for inspiring us with his wisdom. The way he explained the topic is admirable. I also wish to express my gratitude to our staffs for providing encouragement and support. I am very grateful to NISA for giving us such an opportunity to organize this event. I also extend my big thanks to all my team members, IT team for their support. Thank you guys for making this event a successful one. So thank you guys. Thank you.
Oh, Panda sir, thank you very much, sir, for calling me for in this interaction.
You are welcome. You are welcome. Yeah, I have missed one thing. Like when we have started, like we have thought, like we will have a alumni association. The batch of Akhyans and his friends has started this initiative, and that came into a fruitful manner. Now we are having one alumni, although that is keeping on growing. Your juniors are helping, but the base this Akhyans and their batchmate has done, and night roaming from IT department to designer department and to all, and even calling to the alumni, keeping them in touch with our social media, our LinkedIn, our Twitter, everything they have started. And thank you, Akhans.
Sir,